Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shubhraditya from IIT and STU. Here I am going to present the insight of a paper named The Design of a Software Architecture Supporting Business to Government Information Sharing to Improve the Public Safety and Security, Combining the Business Rules, Events and Blockchain Technology, to my Honorable Teacher MD Iftekhar Alam, Assistant Professor, IIT and STU. Here are the contents, the abstract of the paper, the introduction, the information sharing requirements, the architecture designing of a software architecture, the evaluation of the architecture, and at last but not least, the conclusion and the suggestion for further research. Here the abstract of this paper, that it is critical for governments to acquire the information from corporations in order to protect the public safety and security. But this data can be utilized to identify whether the transported products are suspicious and need to be physically examined or not. The authors of this paper presented an architecture that consists of a blockchain technology that keeps the events and rules for information sharing that are regulated by the enterprise in order to make the use of the data. In the introduction, they produce this insight that both enterprise and the government entities can be benefited from the easy and seamless information sharing technology. Businesses requires the capability to keep the information private and the certainty that the sharing information is also legal. Government requires high quality of the data to base their risk assessment on. The goal of this study is to create a B2G, which means business to government information sharing architecture that protect the privacy and the security while also meeting the commercial needs also. Here are the information sharing requirements, and the business sharing information with customs. As always, the customs serves as a gatekeeper, as a collector. Customs require business to disclose the information. The potential danger reflect the requirements for high quality information. To maintain the competition, custom must reduce the administrative burden on the enterprise to a minimum. Firms can also voluntarily provide the further data is determined by whether or not their needs are met or not. The information should be kept confidential according to the needs of the businesses. As we know, confidentiality is always a barrier, but there is a trust factor which will improve the willingness to share the information. For the architecture to be acceptable to the businesses, it should keep the information confidential according to the needs of the businesses. The next requirement is the information should be shared while allowing the business to avoid the liability. The entry summary declaration, which also known as the ESD, is the primary source of the security analysis. The shipper declares the value and the complete description of the items. The transporter avoids having the product description in practice since it may increase the liabilities. The next requirement is the information sharing using the architecture should be lawful. Information sharing between the business and the customs is complicated process due to the legal reasons. Legal status of this data sharing is determined by the legality of the data collection and the storage. Exchanging the information of this critical to public safety and security, certain expectations can be made from the businesses. Here is the design of the architecture of this software. There is some characteristics using the blockchain technology of this architecture. The ledger should be distributed in the network. The information should be recorded in the ledger. The data element in the events and their marked trees, the headers of the event, the conclusion mechanism, and the procedural overview. The architecture components for the access control of the software architecture. Decision component allow the users to access the data items based on their choices. Business and the government entities who need to access to sensitive data can use this information. To receive the metadata from the other party of the system, the decision component has access to its own dedicated copy of this ledger. Here is the next point, the metadata and the context information. As you know, metadata are frequently defined as the data about the data in literature. There is no compelling justification for metadata to be kept in private. The data type of the goods description and the party whose business rules must be sought by the decision component should be included in this metadata. The next architectural design of the architectural point is the regulating the access via the encryption and the decryption of parts of the data. Access to the data is controlled in this architecture by the encryption and the decryption. Companies can decrypt the data pieces of or metadata and send them to the others without providing the access to the other party to their own information. Access and the location are no longer tied. Businesses can enrich and combine the data in the ledger. Here is the evaluation of the architecture. Here is a demonstration that there is businesses in two parts, and the architecture and at last the government organization or the customs. In the first part, the businesses are in the first part they gather the elements and the request for confirmation, which will go to the second part of the businesses, and there is a decision point. If it is not confirmed, it will end here, and if it is confirmed, it will encrypt the market route and send it to the shipper, which will go to the first part of the businesses, and where the first part of the businesses will file and which will send to the below file header and add the event to the chain, which will start the broadcasting of the new events to the architecture. The architecture get the components and further broadcast the new event to the customs or the government organization, which will view the event and requirements in the ledger copy. If it is met, if it is not, if the customer is not interested, it will end here. If the customer is interested, they will access request to the architecture. The architecture will request the business's rules or the access the metadata in the ledger copy if there is a ledger if there is a copy in the ledger. The first part of the businesses send the businesses rules back to the architecture as requested, where there will be reasoning and a condition point. If the access is allowed, access are not allowed, which will send the notification to the customs and receive the customer will receive the notification and ends there. If it is allow the accesses, it will send the key to the customs or the government organization to access the description of the goods, and according to the information, the government organization or the customs will risk the assessment. The next is the evaluation of the requirements. As we know, the information should be kept and confidential according to the needs of the businesses. Information should be shared, but it also allowing the businesses to avoid the liability. Information sharing using this architecture should be lawful. It should not break any law according to the country's law. And at last, the conclusion and the suggestions for further research. As you know, blockchain enables the sharing of the events. Blockchain ensures the trustworthiness of the information as its nature. It also enables the organization and the government organization to receive more information for the businesses to ensure the public safety and security. Information can be used for better and more focused inspection for the government. Use of the generic business rules to ensure that data access complies with legislation is also a means to increase the willingness to share information from the businesses to the government. And at last, thank you for enjoying my presentation till the last.